the player's perspective on baseball in the COVID era. Minnesota Twins pitcher Randy Dobnak joins us next on Beat the Shift. Welcome to another episode of the Beat the Shift podcast presented by Fangraphs. My name is Ariel Cohen, and with me as always, Reuven Guy. How are you, Reuven?
I'm doing great. How are you doing today?
I'm doing fantastic, and we've got a special guest tonight on the show. He has a career earned run average of 3.12. He's got a ground ball rate of 60%, which is enormous. He's accumulated 1.1 career WAR, according to Baseball Reference. And from my statistical standpoint, he posted a 36% WPDI in 2019. What's that? We'll explain that later. But I want to introduce Minnesota Twins pitcher Randy Dobnak. How are you, Randy?
Good. How are you guys?
Doing fantastic. Thanks
great.
so much. How's your New Year started?
Not too shabby. I've thrown a few bullpens, so get back in the swing of things a little bit, get ready for spring training.
Right. I wanted to ask you, how does this offseason compare to other off seasons prior? Because obviously we had the shortened 2020 season. We have a somewhat uncertain start to 2021. Are you doing anything differently?
I'm kind of doing what I did during the whole quarantine thing. As far as, kind of just typical throwing bullpens and stuff. I mean, the facilities that I use haven't been locked down, so I've been able to go ahead and use those for throwing bullpens. And then the local high school field, I just go over and throw with the kid that catches me. So we just kind of go over in the mornings and whatnot. It's a little cold, but it gets the job done. But as far as lifting and all that goes, I've been able to use the gym and stuff. So nothing really crazy is different compared to previous off seasons, other than the whole wear a mask thing, kind of distance yourselves and all that stuff.
Well, last year you actually only had divisional play. You didn't actually face the entire league. Was it easier to prepare for games last year in the shortened season? And is it going to make it a little bit more difficult this coming season?
It was a little strange. I mean, I think it's a little bit beneficial sometimes, and sometimes it's not. Facing the same team over and over again more than usual. I think benefits the hitter more than the pitcher. I think there's a point where I can't remember if I faced a team 3 times in a row or it was just twice in a row, but we had one guy, I think Odorizzi, faced the Royals 3 times in a row, and facing the same lineup, 3 starts in a row, they kind of get used to you and whatnot. But going forward, I think for me personally, I treat each start or each game as a separate entity. So the days before leading up to it, if I'm going to be starting, I'll do my research and I'll see what what guys are hot hitting, like what are they hitting, what are they hitting well, what are they not hitting well, location wise and all that. And kind of just come up with a game plan and attack them with that.
Yeah, last year, Jacob deGrom in New York, he had a streak of 4 straight starts against the Marlins. There was a period of almost a month where all he faced was Marlins. So anything goes these years with COVID. It's crazy.
He's pretty nasty, so I can't remember how he did, but I think he did all right.
He did okay, yeah. So, from the player's perspective, as we have you on, minor leagues have been there was no minor leagues in 2020. How do you think that it's going to affect how prospects are coming up and how they're going to perform this year and also in their development for the future?
I think it's really strange just to think about it. Whenever I signed in 2017, everything was normal. As far as all that goes, I don't really know how those players are going to be like managing what they've been doing, because for some of them they won't have played since, I guess, spring training of last year. Before that, you go all the way back to 2019 end of the season. So it'll almost be like almost a year and a half since they've played competitive baseball, rather than throwing bullpens or throwing to live hitters. But you can do all that as much as you want, but comparing that to like a live game, with fans and all that, it's just so much different.
Do you think there's going to be like an innings limit? I mean, for you personally, you pitched 128 innings in 2008 overall, 160 163 in 2019, and only 46 innings last year. So do you think there's going to be an innings limit, especially if pitchers want to try to jump to 100 to 150 to 175 innings next year?
I think that I guess that'll probably vary team to team, but I mean, as far as I go, I prepare the way that every season should be. I go in expecting myself to be able to go out there and perform every fifth day. I don't want to take any chances. Kind of go into spring training, thinking, oh, I'll get to throw some bullpens down here and there, but I go into spring training over prepared. I always have done that just because I know some guys come in under prepared and they end up getting hurt or things that shouldn't be happening happen. But I don't really know if I'll have a say in innings limit. I guess that it's all up to the analytics and the coaching staff and obviously the pitchers, and how they feel. But I guess it's just depends on how you prepare yourself.
And will it depend also, like, I'm guessing you're assuming last year was your quote unquote rookie season. Will rookies be treated any different, or players coming off injury? Like your teammate Jake Odorizzi, he had an injury and he missed he missed some time last year. So is that going to affect him or you going forward also?
I don't think so. I mean, I can't speak personally for other people, but I know that, Odorizzi's arm was totally fine. It was just, the one time he got a line drive back at him, so he was out for I forget how long, but that just it was out of his control. And the other thing was a blister. It's just things that are out of his control. And for some guys, if they have arm problems, it's a bigger story rather than just having things that are out of your control, hurt you.
Right. So you mentioned analytics might be involved, and one thing that we've noticed, especially since we play a lot of fantasy baseball here, that the number of innings per start per pitcher has trended downward. I mean, we saw the Tampa Bay Rays. Look at the World Series. Blake Snell was pitching a gem, and the Rays held him to 5 innings, and they had their playbook, and the playbook said take him out after 5. Do you think we're going to see more of that going forward, or was that just something that occurred in the short season that teams are going to try to say, no, we're going to find our pitchers who are going to really give us length next year?
I think last season might have been like a little bit of like a test run for some things, but as far as we keep going, like we keep going and going with analytics, it's getting more important, from pitch to pitch, batter to batter. At first, I wasn't really a big fan of it, because I had that kind of old school mentality. I'm gonna go out there and I'm gonna throw the baseball and I'm gonna get outs and help the team win. But nowadays they have like all that spin rate and stuff. So I've been trying to use that to my advantage as much as I can. But there's people that are above me that know a lot more about that stuff than I do. I just know I go out there and throw it, and they tell me if it's good or not.
So, do the Twins have a different? Would you think a different philosophy? I don't want to step on any toes, but do you think the Twins operate a little bit similar to the Rays? Are they a little bit more aggressive when it comes to this?
Um,
You don't have
I
to give
think
away
that
any secrets or anything like that. It's just
no, I mean I think they're pretty analytical, but if a guy's rolling, they're not gonna take him out. I mean, I can't really speak for I can't really speak for my manager and stuff like that, but every team's different and they just want to do what's best for the team and what's best to go out there and win.
Right. So, we have a big media environment today, social media and stuff, and fantasy baseball is huge. Do you pay any attention to fantasy baseball at all? I know some football players, they know, oh, my fantasy stats were great this week. Do you pay any attention to that or others on your team?
I don't. I used to play that way back in the day, like in high school and college and stuff, and I always thought fantasy baseball was a little way too much for me. Baseball's just a super, it's a long grind. Football's a little different. There's
Right.
16 or 17 weeks, and you can set your lineup, once a week. And I still play fantasy football, but as far as baseball goes, I mean, I have some friends that play it, and they'll kind of fill me in with, how I did each start. I'm like, I don't really care for it, but it's like, it's kind of, if I have a good start, it's like, oh, you helped me win. Cool.
Right.
Congrats. But yeah, back when I used to play, I thought it was just because it's like you gotta check your lineup every single day, and sometimes people are late scratches and stuff like that. But I don't really know if many guys pay attention to this stuff as much as you probably think. But I
Right.
think football's a little different.
You actually did help one of our home leagues win because we picked you up very early and you were you're one of our more consistent pitchers, and so we'd like to thank you for that. But to move into a slightly different topic, you see a lot of players now on social media. You see Trevor Bauer during his free agency. You see your former teammate Trevor May. Marcus Stroman is on there. Blake Snell is on there. Does that have an impact on the players? Do you think? Because actually, Trevor May said that going on and being on social media actually helped him a little bit. Do you think that affects players like yourself?
I mean, everybody's different. I mean, it's just kind of based on people's personalities, I guess. But for me, I mean, I like interacting with the fans, good or bad. Every time I have a bad start, I'll go there and people will be cussing me out and giving me all kinds of bad names in my DMs and stuff like that. But I mean, it's all part of it. We're playing in the highest stage of baseball, and people are gonna get mad, people are gonna be happy, and you kind of just got to people just deal with it differently. But like I said, with Trevor May and stuff like that, like everybody has their own little brand, I guess you can say, and it's just kind of the way that we go about it. I like I said, I like interacting with the fans and kind of just trying to show them that we're real people, we're not just like these walking robots and stuff.
Well, speaking of the fans, do you think that any players are going to be playing differently once the fans come back? I mean, it must have been very odd playing with no fans. I know you used to play in an independent league where the crowds weren't as big as the major leagues, but do you think that players will be playing different when the fans come back, and specifically like starters and relievers?
I like playing in front. I think it's really weird playing without fans. A lot of players feed off that energy that the fans bring, and it's just awesome. Just to have them there backing you. If you're a hitter, if you like hit a home run, everybody's cheering for you. If you're a pitcher, you get out of a big situation. Um, just like all that energy coming out of the crowd and stuff like that. And we play for the fans, and we like to entertain them and go out there and have fun doing it. So as far as that goes, I don't really know if it'll change the way some guys play. But having a lot of people in the stands creates some of that adrenaline for some guys, and crazy things happen.
Do you think it affects closers? Because I know that there are some closers that thrive on the energy in terms of the crowd coming in. We're a tight game situation, high leverage index, and everything. Do you think it might affect certain type of roles on teams?
I think maybe relievers sometimes they come into the big situations, the sticky spots where they need to like have some more adrenaline pumping, throw a little bit harder, and kind of just feed off the energy that the fans bring. So if I had to guess, maybe the relievers or maybe even being the closer.
Right. So, how do you think a pitching coach affects you? We know that Jeremy Hefner now with the Mets are there. What impact have you seen on pitching coaches for you personally? And maybe tell us about the pitching coach that affected you most. Maybe you had a high school coach or a college coach or so. Who was the person that affected you the most?
Um, I think pitching coaches have a lot to do with a lot of development of guys. For me, I never really had a pitching coach besides like my dad growing up. He kind of just showed me like his thing was when we were growing up, we would play and catch. He's like, just try different grips on the ball and throw it and see what happens with it. Because different different grips, cause different movement and stuff like that. And that was 15 plus years ago. And come to think of it, that's kind of how the way it is. So if I had to say anybody, it's probably him. He's the one kind of taught me how to play the game, and I never really had like personal trainers or any like any stuff like that, pitching coaches growing up. But yeah, Jeremy did a great job last year. This year we had Pete Mackey. He does a great job, kind of just giving instant feedback in the bullpens and when we're warming up, if we're just starting a bullpen, on our off day or something like that. And if we have questions, that they're there to help us answer them, and they have like all the analytical numbers and stuff to back it up. If we're asking questions about spin rate or location wise and where we need to throw to certain guys and all that stuff.
So I do a lot of statistics over at Fangraphs, and I had an article last year talking about a new statistic that I wrote called WPDI, Weighted Plate Discipline Index, to give us an idea of the breakdown of is pitchers getting strikes in the zone, is it getting contact, are they getting swings? Basically, if you think about it, if I express every single possible outcome in terms of three things: swung on, made contact in and out of the zones. There's actually 6 outcomes. You can be in the zone, swung on, no contact, out of the zone, so on and so forth. And if you take a look at the percentage of pitches that a pitcher throws that are generating contact, not in, out, and whatnot, you can learn a lot about a pitcher. And your name just popped up to me last year as having an elite WPDI, an elite play discipline index. And part of that I saw about you is the ability to get players to swing outside of the zone. The great Greg Maddux, his recipe to what makes a great pitcher is throw a strike when they ain't swinging and throw a ball when they are swinging. And I've noticed that you've done that. Your quantities that you throw out of the zone are elite. We're talking 80th, 90th percentiles of getting batters to swing out of the zone. I mean, you want them to swing at crappy pitches and whatnot. And of course, as most people notice with some of the more regular metrics, your ground ball rate is 60%. That is super elite in baseball. That means that out of every batter that they face that hits a ball, 60% go right to your infield. And you like ground balls as a pitcher, I'm assuming.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit about whether you think what I'm saying is true, whether you're planning for it? How does that come about in your arsenal? Are you aware of this, and is that the name of your game?
Well, I don't want to give away any of my secrets, but I mean, people can go watch video. It's just the way that I throw. I have a lot of pitches that move downward. My sinker, my slider, my changeup, everything kind of just goes downward. So I try to live on the bottom of the zone, and sometimes they miss below the zone, and I get chases on those, and they'll just. I mean, a lot of the time when they do make contact, even if it's hard contact, it's straight into the ground. I guess it's. Sometimes they beat the shit, I guess you can say is your podcast name, but it's just part of the game. That's part of the game. You can't really plan for that. You can plan for it a little bit, according to some hitters, but ultimately, balls are going to find the holes once they put them in play. Not more often than not, but I'll go on stretches where almost I feel like every ball that's put in play somehow finds a hole, and then I'll go on stretches for like, oh my gosh, every single ball put in play, guys are making plays on. So my goal is just to keep the ball on the ground. If I keep the ball on the ground, that gives them less of a chance to get, extra base hits or home runs, and putting balls on the gap and just creating more base runners rather than singles, because they say that, singles won't kill you in the long run. It's the double, it's just the home runs, it's just the power hits that are going to be the ones that kill you.
Right, exactly. We got a couple of mailbag questions for people who wanted to get your take on things, and one of them goes right to this ground ball issue. And Frank says, as a ground ball heavy pitcher, what sort of things happen that fans may not necessarily be aware of? Do you talk with infielders on how you're going to try to get outs? Does having different infield personnel change your approach at all? Do you consider things like exit velocity and try to hold batters to a minimum? What do you think about what Frank is asking?
We have coaches that'll adjust the infielders according to each batter. Some guys are more pull heavy, some guys will go every direction on the field. So before each batter, they'll adjust them. Sometimes have 3 guys shift on the right side, 3 guys shift on the left side, and whatnot. As far as me telling them what to do, no, I just go out there and throw the ball, and wherever they put the ball in play, I hope somebody's there to make a play, and if not, I just clear my head and get to the next batter. As far as exit velocity goes, I can't really control that either. I mean, I can just try and keep the ball on the ground. That's what I try and do. So, sometimes guys are going to hit the ball pretty hard, but when they do that, I'm hoping that they put it right into the ground, to give my infield a chance to make a play and get the guy out. So I'm not really, obviously, I don't want to keep the guys hitting high velocity off the bat, but as far as I can do it on my end, I'm just trying to get them to beat the ball into the ground as much as I can.
Michael asks, are you working on any new pitches for 2021, or are you trying to Corbinize any pitches? And of course, Corbinize means to do what Patrick Corbin did and say, my slider's my best pitch. Just throw the heck out of it. So which are you doing for 2021?
I'm pretty much keeping the same repertoire that I have, just trying to perfect them all as much as I can, and throw them for strikes at any count. And that's kind of what my game plan is going into each game, trying to locate as best as I can and keep the ball down.
Right. Kurt asks, what is your favorite moment during your time in the USPBL?
Um, I mean, that was my first experience kind of playing in front of fans, and because in college, I mean, we had like 30 people max, it'd be like girlfriends or parents and stuff like that. So every game that I played at the USPBL, they sold out every game. We played 3 4 times a week, and they always sold out. 5,000 plus. They'd have firework nights and stuff like that, and then we'd have time to sign for fans and stuff. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever when I was there. Just the opportunity to play in front of fans that are cheering for you, and just to get that experience doing that was pretty awesome.
Oh, nice. Matt asks, you can only have one Iron City Beer or Iron City Beer or Primanti Brothers. I don't even know what these are. Do you know what these are?
Yeah, they're both from Pittsburgh.
Uh-huh.
It's Iron City Beer and Primanti Brothers. I'm gonna go with
Uh-huh.
Primanti Brothers.
Okay. What is it? A favorite restaurant or something?
It's a restaurant that originated in Pittsburgh, and they're known for putting fries on their sandwiches. It's really good stuff. If you ever get the chance to try it, I would try it. And they're
Ooh,
also
sounds good.
they're expanding around. They're in West Virginia and Maryland and stuff like that. So they're getting around.
Okay, well, I'm going to jump a little bit here, and I'm going to ask you a little bit about this coming season. There was a big trade this today. One of your close rivals traded away one of their better pitchers and and probably their best player. How do you think the AL Central is going to play out this year?
Um, I mean, I think it's going to be a battle. I mean, between almost all the teams. I mean, the White Sox are young and they're really good and they're going to be good for a long time. The Indians are always going to be in the mix with the Twins as well. And the Tigers, you can't get light on the Tigers as well. But as far as everybody else goes, the Royals, they're young too, and I mean, every team has a chance. So, but also obviously getting Lindor and Cookie out of the mix from the Indians is gonna probably help us in the long run because I'm pretty sure Frankie was the first guy I gave up a hit to. So I probably couldn't pick anybody else that's better.
Oh, wow. Wow. Does that make you think, wow, now I got a little bit of an easier start when I face the Indians? Did that run through your mind?
I don't think it runs through my mind, but I know in the back of my head that I don't have to face the door again. Well, I
Right.
guess not as much as I would think.
Right. All right. All right. Let's end the show with quick. It's New Year. So, what is your New Year's resolution for 2021?
I never really thought about one, but if I had to say, I would just, stay healthy and go out there and compete and give myself a shot to come back next year.
Awesome.
Very good.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Randy, for being on the show. And good luck to you in 2021. We hope that the season will start on time. We hope that the virus goes away, and we're looking forward to seeing a lot more of those Randy Dobnak ground balls going forward.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, guys.
Thank you.
Our pleasure. We'll be back with Ruvain's injury report and some wrap up next. And we're back. All right, Ruvain. We had a pretty big trade today in baseball. Francisco Lindor, Carlos Carrasco heading over to the Mets. Are you excited?
I am very excited. Being Mets fans, this is actually one of the biggest trades since, I guess, getting Cespedes in 2015 and going all the way back, getting Mike Piazza back in, I think it was 1998 when they got him. This is the start of a team being good for a while if they can re-sign him.
Amazing. So the Mets receive those two. On the going out from the Mets, the Indians receive Ahmed Rosario, Andres Jimenez, Josh Wolf, and Isaiah Green. A couple of prospects that the Mets took in first or second round, and then a couple guys who are at the major league level. So let's not talk about whether the trade is good for the Mets in a baseball perspective, but from a fantasy-wise, which players are affected the most? I would have to think Carlos Carrasco even more so than Lindor, right?
Yeah, well, Carrasco is going from a good pitcher's park to an extremely good pitcher's park, and I think Derek Carty already had mentioned on Twitter that he's going. I think from number 5 pitcher's park to number 2, and that helps him immensely.
Do you think that it outweighs, because the NL East is a much tougher division than the AL Central, do the park factors outweigh the change in divisions?
I don't think so. I really think that good pitchers will pitch well no matter where they are, and their surroundings will only help them. It should only enhance them. I mean, he played in a not that great division, but it shouldn't affect him that much because he's still going to be the pitcher who he is. He's not going to change anything, and he's going to have possibly a better defense behind him for the entire season because that's something that the Mets are actually working on. And a better defense behind him means more runs saved, means a lower ERA, possibly lower WHIP, and that's what you have to look for when it comes to fantasy.
And it helps Marcus Stroman, who gets a lot of ground balls, just like our buddy Randy Dobnak, who is just on the show. From terms of Lindor's value, I think it would help him because, especially the run production counting stats, the Mets offense will be a lot better than what the Cleveland Indians would have been. I think the guy who gets hurt the most, and tell me if you agree, is Jose Ramirez on the Indians, who now has no protection.
Yeah, he's going to be alone in that lineup. He's actually the most expensive, quote unquote, player on that team. I think he's making like $9 million right now. And if they're cleaning house, I would probably expect him possibly to get traded. Also, I mean, he may even ask for a trade because that team looks like they're trying to rebuild at this point.
We'll see about that. Does this trade make the Mets more or less likely now to acquire Trevor Bauer? Does it make them more or less likely to acquire George Springer?
I think this is going to mean that they're out because they got Carrasco. I think they're going to be out on Trevor Bauer, especially if they want to get some help in their bullpen, and they're going to want to do that. One of the guys that they've been talking about trying to get is Brad Hand. Now, Brad Hand, for fantasy purposes, has been a very, very good closer, but if he comes to the Mets, he may not close. You have Edwin Diaz there, and if they do sign Brad Hand, he's going to split some saves and he's going to lose some value. And having now with Francisco Lindor there, I can't. If they're going to want to sign him to an extension, how can they also spend so much money on George Springer and pay him also? I think they may go for more defense, someone like a Jackie Bradley to go up the middle and to sign a reliever instead of going this George Springer route. What do you think?
Yeah, I think that's possible. I think they are going to be out on Bauer. According to a Twitter poll that I put out asking the same question, are the Mets more or less likely? And 67% say they are now less likely to sign Trevor Bauer. Interestingly, maybe Mets fans are drawing this, but 56% says they're more likely to acquire George Springer. The funny thing is, if you go on Twitter and you see people tweeting, here's the potential Mets lineup for 2021, and they show Lindor in it now, almost all of them I've seen include George Springer. He's not on the Mets yet, but yet people.
But the thing is, the difference between Brandon Nimmo and George Springer from WAR from last year is not that much, and Nimmo is under control, and they're not paying him that much. Yes, his defense isn't that great compared to George Springer in center field, but he's a cheaper option if you want to spend elsewhere. You can't spend on everything, otherwise you're going to go over the cap.
Yeah, the luxury tax threshold is what they're. I've heard from sources that Steve Cohen is not opposed to going over it, but prefers not to go over it this very year. So I think that if you're going to buy a George Springer, you're crippling yourself. If you want to stay under from buying anybody else, you are better off with a Jackie Bradley Jr., who would improve your defense, by the way. I'm hoping the Mets have enough offense in there. So there you go. Interestingly, one thing that not a lot of people are mentioning about the trade, if the Mets would sign George Springer, they would lose a draft pick in the following in the next draft. Now that they have Lindor, if Lindor does go elsewhere the following year, the Mets would actually gain a draft pick. Hopefully the Mets will sign him long term is, I think, the goal. But if that doesn't work out, they get a draft pick. So net, it's actually 2 high draft picks that they would be getting. So that's one other aspect into it. All right, let's go to your injury update. Let's see what you have tonight.
All right, I'm going to start with the San Francisco Giants and Reyes Maranta. Giants manager Gabe Kapler has suggested that Maranta will be given the opportunity to compete for the closer's job in spring training. Now, he missed the entire 2020 season rehabbing from shoulder surgery, but when he was pitching in 2019, he was very good, so that's something to keep an eye on. Matt Chapman, according to his agent, Scott Boras, Chapman has received clearance for increased activity and should be ready to start spring training on time. He actually had right hip surgery September of 2020. Jordan Hicks also is expected to enter spring training on a normal throwing schedule. He opted out of 2020, and he was recovering from Tommy John surgery. Another guy in the Cardinals who's coming back is Miles Michaelis. He is expected to start spring training on a normal schedule. He did have surgery on a right flexor tendon in late July 2020. Tommy Pham, he underwent surgery to repair a tear of his TFCC, or the triangular fibrocartilage complex, in his left wrist at some point in the past couple months. They didn't really tell. It was a little bit unclear when it happened, and we don't know how he's going to be, but it's a wrist injury, so that's something to watch, to keep an eye on for his power. Another guy who had a wrist injury was Starlin Castro. He is considered fully healthy and actually wanted to play winter ball, but the Nationals told him to rest and prepare for spring training. Castro had surgery for a fractured wrist back in August of 2020. And lastly, another guy in the Nationals and another wrist injury, that's Steven Strasburg. He's resumed throwing and is expected to be ready to start spring training. Strasburg had carpal tunnel surgery August of 2020.
Oh, what's your risk tolerance? You're the injury guy on Strasburg. Last year, obviously, was a complete bust for him. What's your take on is it too risky to draft where he's going now?
I don't think he's going to risk that too much risk. But again, like we discussed in our previous podcast, I wouldn't be paying a premium for him. He's very similar to what this is very similar to what David Price had a couple years ago when he had an issue with his wrist. Also, I think that David Price came back okay, so I don't think there's going to be an issue with Steven Strasburg. He's also a little bit younger, and unfortunately, Strasburg knows how to come back from surgeries and from injuries, so I don't think it's going to be that much of an issue.
He's the 27th pitcher on the board taken in the NFBC currently, 73rd player overall. The pitcher who's right before him is Carlos Carrasco. I think, especially with the change today, I think I would rather have Carrasco than Strasburg this year. You agree?
Less risk.
Yeah, unbelievable. All right, Ruvain, why don't you tell us where we can read your stuff and follow you?
Okay, you can follow me on Twitter at MLB Injury Guru, where I tweet out injury updates throughout the season and the off-season. And I also have a weekly in-season article on Rotoballer discussing the injuries, when they're coming back, and who's next up.
All right, my name's Ariel Cohen. I write for Fangraphs, CBS Sports, Sportsline, and Rotoballer. The ATC projections are going to be coming out probably in about a week and a half by the time you hear this. So check them out. They'll be on Fangraphs this year once again. Very excited for that. Want to give a special thank you to Minnesota Twins pitcher Randy Dobnak for joining us on today's show. A couple of good thoughts about the 2021 uncertainty, a little bit of an insight into what he does and how he thinks. So it was kind of cool. And we'll be back later this week with some more analysis. Todd Zola comes on the show next. Excited for him. And from all of us here on Beat the Shift, we'll see you next time.
Thanks for listening to the Beat the Shift podcast presented by Fangraphs. Follow us on Twitter at beat_shift_pod.